The ultimatum. The massive ship hung in space like a crystal mountain. Its surface gleamed with strange lights that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The ship was 3 kilometers long and belonged to the Galactic Hegemony Council, rulers of the galaxy for 10,000 years. Ambassador Veltar stepped from the transport shuttle onto the space station orbiting Earth. The creature looked like living glass, its body made of clear crystal that shifted colors as it moved. Blue light pulsed inside its chest where a heart should be. When it spoke, the words came out as musical chimes that the universal translator turned into human speech. "I am here to deliver the sacred demand," Veltar announced to the waiting human delegation. The ambassador had done this ceremony 847 times before with other species. It was always the same: fear, then acceptance, then submission. Secretary General Maria Santos stood at the front of the human group. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but she did not look afraid. Behind her stood representatives from every nation on Earth, along with governors from Mars, Europa, and the other human colonies scattered throughout the solar system. "We're listening," Santos said simply. Veltar activated a holographic display that filled the air between them. Images of vast fleets and destroyed worlds appeared in the blue light. "The Galactic Hegemony Council has brought peace to this galaxy for 100 centuries. We maintain order. We prevent wars. We ensure survival." The ambassador gestured to the images of burning planets. "These worlds chose chaos. They refused the sacred demand and brought destruction upon themselves. We do not wish the same fate for your species." Santos watched the images without flinching. She had seen these recordings before. Human intelligence had been studying the Council for decades, ever since first contact 5 years ago. They knew what was coming. "The sacred demand is simple," Veltar continued. 40% of your resources must be given to the Council each year. Your military forces will be placed under Council oversight. You will provide genetic samples from your population for the Great Archive. In return, you receive protection and the right to exist. The other human representatives shifted uncomfortably. 40% of everything they produced. Control of their armies, their very DNA. It was slavery disguised as protection. "What if we refuse?" asked General Zhang, the head of Earth's combined military forces. Veltar's crystal body flashed bright red. "No species has ever refused the sacred demand twice." "What do you mean, twice?" Santos asked. "The first refusal brings this conversation. The second refusal brings the enforcement fleet." The ambassador's voice turned cold. "The enforcement fleet has never failed in its purpose." Santos looked back at her fellow humans. She saw fear in some faces, but also determination. They had known this moment would come. Earth's leaders had spent 5 years preparing for it, ever since the Council made first contact and began their evaluation of humanity. The evaluation had been a test. The Council sent observers to study human civilization, to see if they would be easy to control. They watched human wars, human politics, human culture. They concluded that humans were like every other species they had conquered, divided, weak, and eager to trade freedom for safety. They were wrong. "We need time to consider your offer," Santos said diplomatically. Veltar's body pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Of course. All species ask for time. You have 30 solar cycles to make your decision. After that, the enforcement fleet will arrive to collect what is owed." The ambassador turned to leave, then paused. "I have made this offer to 847 other species, Secretary General Santos. They all made the same choice in the end. They all chose to live." Santos smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "Ambassador, how many of those species had a choice?" "I do not understand." "Did any of them have the power to say no?" Veltar's crystal form flickered. In 10,000 years of conquest, no species had ever asked that question. They simply accepted that the Council was too powerful to resist. "It does not matter," the ambassador said finally. "Power is not about weapons or fleets. It is about will, and no species has ever had the will to stand against the Council." After Veltar left, the human delegation remained in the conference room. The silence stretched for long minutes as everyone processed what they had just heard. 40% of everything. Control of their military. Their children's DNA in alien hands. "Well," Santos said finally, "I think we all know what our answer is." General Zhang leaned forward. "Maria, they've conquered nearly 1,000 civilizations. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. If we say no, If we say yes, we're slaves, Santos interrupted. If we say no, at least we die free. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, Earth's chief scientist, cleared her throat. Actually, we might not die at all. All eyes turned to her. The elderly physicist looked nervous but determined. The Council's observers spent 5 years studying us. But we spent 5 years studying them too. And there's something they don't know about humans. What? Santos asked. We've been preparing for this conversation since the day they arrived. Santos felt a surge of hope. The secret projects. The hidden installations. The backup plans that even she didn't fully understand. Are you saying we actually have a chance? Dr. Kane stood and walked to the window that looked out at Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from here, but she knew that at this very moment, millions of people were working in hidden factories and secret laboratories, preparing for a war that might be impossible to win. I'm saying we're about to find out what humans are really capable of when our backs are against the wall. Santos joined her at the window. And if we lose, then at least the rest of the galaxy will know that someone tried. Maybe that will be enough to inspire others. The Secretary General nodded slowly. She thought about her grandchildren playing in the parks of New Geneva. She thought about the Mars colonists who had spent decades turning a dead world into a garden. She thought about the human spirit that had carried their species from caves to the stars. Draft the response, she ordered. General Zhang looked confused. What response? Santos turned back to face the room, her tired eyes now blazing with determination. The one Ambassador Veltar won't expect. The one that's going to change everything. 2 hours later, the message was broadcast across all diplomatic channels to every council ship in the system. It was brief, simple, and delivered in every human language simultaneously. The people of Earth and her colonies have considered the sacred demand of the Galactic Hegemony Council. Our answer is simple. Go to hell. On the crystal ship, Ambassador Veltar received the message and stood perfectly still for several minutes. In 10,000 years of galactic conquest, no species had ever responded with such crude defiance. The ambassador immediately sent a priority transmission to the Council's capital. The humans have refused the sacred demand, but there is something different about this refusal. I recommend we send the full enforcement fleet, not just a single battle group. The reply came back within hours. One stubborn species does not require our full might. The 7th battle group will handle this matter as they have handled all others. Veltar looked out at the blue world below and felt something it had never experienced. Before, in 10,000 years of service to the Council doubt on Earth, the real work was just beginning. The news of humanity's refusal spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species whispered the story to each other in hidden places. Humans had said no to the Council. It was impossible, but it had happened. On Earth, Secretary General Santos stood in the war room deep beneath the Swiss Alps. The chamber buzzed with activity as military leaders and scientists worked at control stations linked to every human world. Giant screens showed the solar system, but also something else, hidden installations that had been building in secret for 5 years. Report on Project Prometheus, Santos ordered. General Zhang pulled up a holographic display. Mars production facilities are at full capacity. We're manufacturing quantum disruption mines at a rate of 5,000 per day. Installation teams have already deployed the first wave along predicted approach routes. Santos nodded. Prometheus was their mine-laying operation, designed to turn space around Earth into a deadly maze. The mines were invisible to most sensors and could punch through any known shield technology. What about Project Perseus? She asked. Dr. Kane stepped forward, looking excited despite the circumstances. Luna Base has activated all 17 platforms. They're disguised as deep space telescopes, but each one can accelerate a tungsten rod to 30% light speed. We can hit any target in the solar system within 6 minutes. Perseus was humanity's kinetic bombardment system. Instead of explosives, they used pure physics. Metal rods moving at incredible speeds could destroy entire cities. The Council's ships were tough, but physics was physics. And Project Pandora? This time it was Admiral Chen Wei who answered. The grizzled naval officer had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. Europa Shipyards has revealed the hidden fleet. 200 ships, all built with our new technology. They're smaller than Council vessels, but they're fast and they work together like a pack of wolves. Santos smiled grimly. For 5 years, while the Council's observers watched human cities and armies, They had ignored the industrial facilities on Europa. The ice moon had been hollowed out and turned into the largest shipyard in human history. But the most important project was still secret, even from most of the people in this room. "What about Athena?" Santos asked quietly. Dr. Kane glanced around nervously. "The network is active. Every human colony, every ship, every installation is connected. When the time comes, we'll be able to coordinate our entire species as a single unit." Project Athena was humanity's greatest secret. Using quantum entanglement, they had created an instant communication network that connected every human outpost. More than that, it allowed them to share data, tactics, and even consciousness itself across impossible distances. While they worked on their defenses, another part of humanity's plan was already in motion. Secret ships had been launching from hidden bases for months, carrying a cargo more dangerous than any weapon: hope. Captain Sarah Martinez commanded one of these vessels as it approached the Valian mining collective. 300 light-years from Earth, the Valians had been slaves of the Council for 3,000 years, their entire species forced to mine rare metals in asteroid belts. "This is Captain Martinez of the human vessel Freedom," she broadcast on the emergency frequency all slaves knew. "We're here to offer you a gift." The response came quickly. "Human ship, you are in violation of Council space. Depart immediately or face consequences." "Actually, we're here to give you something the Council doesn't want you to have," Martinez replied. "The ability to fight back." She activated the cargo bay doors, releasing thousands of small pods into space. Each pod contained something revolutionary: fusion reactors, quantum computers, and most importantly, encrypted communicators that the Council could not monitor. "This is impossible," came the Valian response. "No species shares technology freely. What do you want in return?" "We want you to be free," Martinez said simply. "Use these tools well." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as human ships reached dozens of enslaved worlds. They gave away humanity's most advanced technology without asking for anything back. It was a concept so alien that many species couldn't understand it at first. On the water world of Hydros, the aquatic Hydrani received weather control devices that could turn their entire planet into a fortress. On the desert world of Kepri, the insectoid inhabitants got quantum communicators that allowed their hive minds to coordinate across star systems. Each gift came with the same message: "From the free humans of Earth, no one should kneel." The Council's response was swift and brutal. Enforcement squadrons began sweeping through space, hunting for the human gift-bearers. They caught some ships and destroyed them, but it was too late. The technology had spread too far. On the Council's capital world of Nexus Prime, the 12 elder species met in emergency session. They gathered in a massive chamber carved from a single crystal, their forms representing 10,000 years of evolution beyond their original bodies. The Zephyrian Council leader's crystalline form pulsed with anger. "The humans are spreading technology to our subjects. This cannot be allowed to continue." The ethereal prime speaker, existing as pure energy within a containment field, flickered with concern. "It's not just the technology. They're spreading ideas, concepts our subjects have never encountered, such as freedom without submission, technology shared freely, the idea that no species should rule over another." The ancient Voidwalker, a shadow creature from the space between stars, spoke in a voice like dying stars. "In 10,000 years, no species has ever given away their advantages. They hoard knowledge, seek power, dominate the weak. It is the natural order." "The humans appear to follow a different order," the prime speaker observed. The Council leader's form flashed bright red. "Then we will teach them the natural order. Send word to the enforcement fleet. They are to make an example of this species that will echo through the galaxy for the next 10,000 years. But as the Council made their plans, something unprecedented was happening throughout their empire. On mining worlds, slaves began refusing to work. On agricultural planets, food shipments stopped flowing to Council worlds. On factory stations, production lines went silent. The tributary species were testing their new gifts and discovering that freedom was intoxicating. Back on Earth, Santos received reports from her network of spies and diplomats. The galaxy was stirring. Species that had been silent for millennia were beginning to whisper about rebellion. "It's working," Dr. Kane reported. "The quantum communication network is connecting freed worlds faster than the Council can respond. They're sharing tactics, coordinating resistance, learning from each other." "Good," Santos replied. Because our long-range sensors are picking up something big heading our way. General Zhang pulled up the sensor readings. Council Enforcement Fleet, 7th Battle Group. 50 Dreadnought-class vessels, each one 3 times the size of our largest ship. They'll reach the outer solar system in 4 days. Santos studied the display. 50 massive warships, each one carrying enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Against this force, humanity would field 200 smaller vessels and a collection of hidden weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Are we ready? She asked. Admiral Chen stepped forward. As ready as we can be. The mines are deployed, the kinetic platforms are charged, and the fleet is moving into position. But Maria, he paused, looking uncertain. They've conquered 847 other species. They must know what they're doing. Santos turned to face the room full of humanity's leaders, scientists who had worked without sleep for 5 years, military officers who had trained for a war they never thought they'd fight, politicians who had kept the greatest secret in human history. They've conquered 847 species who had no choice but to submit, she said firmly. But they've never faced a species that spent 5 years preparing to tell them no. They've never fought people who gave away their best weapons to their enemies' slaves. They've never encountered humans. She walked to the window that looked out over the hidden base. Through the reinforced glass, she could see the lights of the command center reflected in the Swiss mountains above. The Council thinks they know us because they watched us for 5 years, but they only saw what we wanted them to see. They think we're divided and weak because that's what they expected to find. Tomorrow they're going to learn what we really are. Dr. Kane nodded slowly. And what are we, Maria? Santos smiled, and for the first time since this began, she looked truly confident. We're the species that just gave military technology to 1,000 enslaved worlds and asked for nothing in return. We're the people who spent 5 years preparing for a war we knew we might lose, just because someone had to try. We're humans, she turned back to the room, and we're about to show the galaxy what that means. Admiral Kothvar stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching the primitive star system grow larger on the main display. The human sun was small and yellow, unremarkable among the billions of stars in the galaxy. Soon, it would be the site of another routine victory for the Council's enforcement fleet. The Admiral was a Nethrani, a species that looked like walking metallic skeletons covered in dark energy fields. His people had served the Council for 8,000 years, ever since they learned the price of resistance. Now they were among the most feared enforcers in the galaxy. Status report, Kothvar commanded in a voice like grinding metal. 50 vessels in perfect formation. Lord Admiral, his tactical officer replied. All weapon systems at full charge. The human system lies directly ahead. And the humans? What do our sensors detect? The sensor operator checked his displays. Minimal military presence, sir. We're detecting approximately 200 small vessels scattered throughout the system. No orbital fortifications around their primary world. No sign of advanced weaponry. Kothvar nodded with satisfaction. It was the same pattern they had seen 847 times before. Species that refused the sacred demand always overestimated their own power. They always thought they could fight the Council with primitive weapons and desperate courage. They were always wrong. Open a channel to the human leaders, Kothvar ordered. The communication was answered immediately. A small human female appeared on the screen, the same one who had delivered the insulting refusal message. Secretary General Santos, according to their intelligence files. I am Admiral Kothvar of the Galactic Hegemony Council, the Admiral announced. You are in violation of galactic law. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Santos looked strangely calm for someone facing annihilation. Admiral, I have a counteroffer. Leave our system now and we won't destroy your fleet. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion went completely silent. In 8,000 years of military service, Kothvar had never heard anything so ridiculous. Human, he said slowly, do you understand what you face? This fleet has destroyed civilizations that ruled entire sectors of space. Your species has barely left its home system. That's true, Santos admitted. We're very young compared to you. But Admiral, you've spent 8,000 years fighting people who had no choice. Today you're fighting people who've had 5 years to prepare. The communication ended. Kothvar stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his weapons officer. Target their primary world. Full bombardment pattern. Yes, Lord Admiral. The 50 dreadnoughts moved into attack formation, their massive hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. They had done this so many times that it felt routine. Point the guns, fire the shots, watch the world burn. The first sign that something was wrong came from the navigation officer. Lord Admiral, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions throughout the system. They're interfering with our targeting systems. Before Kothvar could respond, space around the fleet suddenly lit up with explosions, hundreds of them appearing from nowhere as invisible mines detected the Council ships and detonated. Impossible, the tactical officer shouted. Our shield should stop anything they can build. But the explosions weren't normal. They were quantum disruptions that ignored shields entirely, tearing holes directly in the hulls of the dreadnoughts. 3 ships lost their main engines immediately. 2 more began venting atmosphere. Evasive maneuvers, Kothvar commanded. All ships scatter formation. That was when the second surprise hit them. From the dark side of the human's moon, 17 beams of pure energy lanced out across space. They weren't laser weapons or plasma cannons. They were kinetic kill vehicles. Metal rods accelerated to 30% light speed using gravitational slingshots. The rods hit the Council ships with the force of nuclear weapons, but there was no explosion, no heat signature to detect, just pure kinetic energy that punched through even dreadnought armor like it was paper. The Supreme Fist died first, its entire middle section simply disappearing as a tungsten rod passed through it. The Iron Hegemon lost its bridge, killing the command crew instantly. The Void Crusher began spinning out of control, its engine section completely destroyed. What kind of weapons are these? Kothvar demanded. Before anyone could answer, the third phase of humanity's defense began. Small ships began appearing everywhere around the Council fleet. Not hundreds, thousands. They came from asteroid belts, from behind moons, from hidden positions throughout the solar system. Each ship was tiny compared to a dreadnought, but they moved with impossible coordination. They're swarming us, the tactical officer reported. I count over 3,000 small vessels all attacking simultaneously. The human ships moved like schools of fish or flocks of birds, each one responding to the others in perfect harmony. When a Council ship fired its massive guns, the human vessels flowed around the blast like water. When the dreadnoughts tried to target individual ships, the swarm reformed faster than the targeting computers could track. But the most shocking thing was how the human ships fought. They didn't try to match the Council's firepower. Instead, they used precision strikes against critical systems. Engines, sensors, weapon mounts, life support. The small human fighters found every weakness in ships that had seemed invincible. Lord Admiral, the communications officer called out. I'm receiving surrender demands from the human fighters. What? They're asking us to surrender, sir. They're promising safe passage out of the system if we leave immediately. Kothvar couldn't believe what he was hearing. His fleet was losing, but they weren't defeated yet. Half his ships were still combat capable. They still had enough firepower to destroy every human world 10 times over. All ships focus fire on their primary world, he commanded. If we can't win this battle, we'll at least complete our mission. The remaining Council ships turned their weapons toward Earth. Massive energy cannons charged up with enough power to boil oceans and crack continents. The humans had fought well, but now they would pay the price for their defiance. The weapons fired, and nothing happened. The energy beams simply vanished halfway between the fleet and Earth, as if they had hit some invisible barrier. Report, Kothvar shouted. Unknown, sir. The energy readings are... Lord Admiral, they're impossible. It's like space itself is bending around their world. On the human command ship Defiance, Admiral Chen Wei watched the Council weapons disappear into the quantum shield array humanity had been building around Earth for 3 years. The shield didn't stop energy. It redirected it into parallel dimensions where it could do no harm. Council Fleet, this is Admiral Chen Wei of the Human Defense Force. He broadcast on all frequencies. You've just discovered why no one has ever conquered Earth. We don't just build weapons, we build impossibilities. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kothvar realized he was facing something unprecedented. In 8,000 years of conquest, the Council had never encountered technology like this. Ships that fought like living things, weapons that ignored the laws of physics, defenses that made planets untouchable. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, we've lost 37 ships. The humans have lost none. Kothvar looked at the tactical display. His mighty fleet, which had never known defeat, was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they had thought primitive. And the humans were doing it without anger, without hatred. They were simply demonstrating that the Council's power had limits. "Admiral," came a new voice on the communication channel. It was Secretary General Santos again. "You've seen what we can do. Your choice now is simple. Leave our system alive or stay here and die. We prefer the first option." For the first time in 8,000 years, Admiral Kothvar faced a decision no Council commander had ever faced: retreat or annihilation. "All ships," he commanded slowly. "Prepare to withdraw." "Sir?" his tactical officer asked in shock. "You heard me. Full retreat. Maximum speed." As the surviving Council ships fled the Sol system, Admiral Chen broadcast a message that would spread across the galaxy within hours. "This is Admiral Chen Wei of Earth. Today, the Council demanded tribute from humanity. We gave them our answer. Let every free being in the galaxy know the age of the Council's dominance is ending. No one needs to kneel anymore." In the wreckage left behind, something unprecedented had happened. For the first time in 10,000 years, an enforcement fleet had been defeated. The news would reach every corner of the galaxy, carrying a simple message that would change everything. The humans had said no, and they had made it stick. On worlds across the galaxy, slaves who had received human gifts began to understand that freedom wasn't just a dream. It was a choice. And if humans could make that choice and win, maybe they could too. The rebellion was about to begin. News of the Council fleet's defeat traveled faster than light across the galaxy. On mining worlds where slaves had labored for thousands of years, work stopped completely. In the asteroid fields of the Valian Collective, massive ore haulers suddenly changed course, heading not toward Council stations but toward the hidden weapons caches humans had delivered. Thexra, a Valian miner who had spent 3 centuries breaking rocks in the void, held one of the human communicators in her 4-armed grasp. The device was smaller than her thumb, but it connected her to something she had never experienced: hope. "All mining ships, this is Operations Command," came the familiar voice of their Council overseer. "Resume extraction immediately. Quota deadlines remain in effect." Instead of obeying, Thexera activated the human device. Instantly, her voice was connected to every Valian in their sector of space. Thousands of workers on hundreds of ships and stations. "Brothers and sisters," she said, using words that would have been forbidden just days ago. "The humans defeated the Council fleet. They gave us these communicators for free, asking nothing in return. They showed us that masters can be defied." Across the asteroid belt, Valian workers stopped their machines. For the first time in 3 millennia, the mining collective went silent. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. On the water world of Hydros, the aquatic Hydrani used their new weather control devices to create massive storms that grounded all Council aircraft. On the insect world of Kepri, the hive minds connected their new quantum communicators and became something greater than the sum of their parts, a single intelligence spanning an entire star system. In the depths of space, human Captain Sarah Martinez watched her scanner as more ships appeared around her vessel Freedom. They weren't Council ships coming to arrest her for spreading illegal technology. They were rebels, freed slaves from a dozen species, all asking the same question: "What do we do now?" Martinez smiled as she opened communications to the growing fleet. Former miners, farmers, factory workers, all of them flying stolen ships and carrying human-built weapons. None of them had military training, but they had something else: the desperate courage of people who had tasted freedom. "Now we teach the galaxy what humans taught us," she said. "We show them that no one has to kneel." But the Council was not helpless. In the crystal chambers of Nexus Prime, the 12 elder species met in emergency session. The defeat of an enforcement fleet was unprecedented, but they had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years by adapting to threats. The Voidwalker's shadow form rippled with anger. "The humans must be made an example. Deploy the reality weapons." A shocked silence filled the chamber. The reality weapons had been used only 3 times in galactic history, and each time they had erased entire civilizations from existence. The ethereal Prime speaker flickered with concern. "The reality weapons are meant for threats to the galaxy itself. The humans are just one young species. One species that has inspired rebellion on 1,000 worlds," the Council leader replied, its crystalline form pulsing with red light. "If we do not act decisively, our empire will crumble." The vote was swift. Within hours, the Council's most terrible weapons were being prepared. Planet killers that could age entire worlds to dust in seconds. Temporal bombs that could erase species from the timeline itself. Dimensional weapons that could trap entire star systems in pocket universes. Humanity's intelligence network, spread across the galaxy through their quantum communicators, detected the preparations within days. "They're bringing everything," Dr. Kane reported to the emergency council meeting on Earth. "Weapons we can't even understand, let alone defend against." Secretary General Santos studied the intelligence reports. Ships the size of moons were moving toward human space. Weapons that bent reality itself were being loaded onto vessels that existed partially outside normal space-time. "How long do we have?" she asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4, General Zhang replied. "But Maria, we can't fight these things with conventional weapons. They're not just more advanced. They operate on different laws of physics." Santos turned to Admiral Chen, who had become humanity's greatest military hero after the Battle of Sol. "What are our options?" Chen looked grim. "We can evacuate as many people as possible to the outer colonies. Maybe some humans will survive even if Earth falls." "No," Santos said firmly. "We don't run. If we run now, the rebellion dies with us. Every species that found courage from our example goes back to slavery." Dr. Kane cleared her throat. "There is another option. But it's never been tested." "What kind of option?" "Project Athena was designed to connect human consciousness across space. Right now it links our communicators and computers. But theoretically it could do more. It could link human minds directly." The room went silent. Direct neural linking was science fiction, the stuff of dreams and nightmares. "What would that accomplish?" Santos asked. "Collective intelligence. Every human brain working as part of a single network. We could process information faster than any computer, coordinate better than any military unit, innovate faster than any research team." Admiral Chen frowned. "And the risks?" "We don't know. No one has ever tried networking an entire species. We could lose individual identity. We could go insane. We could create something that isn't human anymore." Santos looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. They were terrified but also determined. They had come too far to surrender now. "How many people would we need to make it work?" "Everyone," Dr. Kane said quietly. "Every human in the solar system, maybe in all our colonies. It only works if we all choose it together." The debate that followed was the shortest in United Nations history. When humanity faced extinction, the choice was surprisingly easy. Within days, the message went out to every human world. The Council is coming with weapons that can unmake reality itself. We have one chance to stop them, but it requires every one of us to become part of something larger. The choice is voluntary, but it's all of us or none of us. The response was overwhelming. On Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of smaller colonies, humans lined up at hastily constructed neural interface centers. Young and old, rich and poor, soldiers and civilians, they all made the same choice. They chose to become something new. The process began on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Dr. Kane activated the global Athena network from her laboratory beneath Geneva, and suddenly every human who had volunteered was connected to every other human. The first sensation was overwhelming. 7 billion minds suddenly aware of each other, sharing thoughts and memories and dreams. For a terrifying moment, it seemed like human consciousness might collapse under its own weight. Then something beautiful happened. Instead of chaos, the network found harmony. Individual personalities didn't disappear. They became part of a symphony. Every human remained themselves, but they were also part of something magnificent and terrible, and utterly new. Maria Santos felt it first, sitting in her office as the connection formed. She was still herself, but she was also the mother in New Tokyo worrying about her children, the engineer on Mars solving a power grid problem, the artist on Europa creating something beautiful, the farmer on Titan growing food for the future. She was all of them, and they were all her, and somehow it made perfect sense. "Status report," she said, and her voice carried across the network to every human in the solar system. The response came not from any single person, but from humanity itself. "We are ready." When the Council's reality weapons entered the solar system 3 days later, they found something they had never encountered. In 10,000 years of conquest, they found a species that had chosen to evolve rather than surrender. The battle that followed would not be fought with ships and weapons alone. It would be fought between two different concepts of what life could become. And humanity was about to show the galaxy that evolution didn't always follow the same path. The first council ship to enter the system was the dreadnought Temporal Sovereign, armed with weapons that could age entire fleets to dust in seconds. Its captain activated the aging field as soon as human ships appeared on sensors. Nothing happened. The human vessels continued their approach, their hulls somehow immune to temporal manipulation. As they got closer, the council crew realized why. The ships weren't just carrying humans anymore. They were carrying parts of the collective human consciousness, distributed across quantum networks that existed outside normal time and space. You couldn't age a mind that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Impossible, the captain whispered, just before his ship was torn apart by weapons that seemed to predict his every move. Across the battle zone, similar scenes played out as humanity's networked intelligence proved too alien for the Council's ancient weapons to affect. The war was about to change in ways that neither side had imagined. Council demanded tribute. Humanity's reply shattered the galaxy. The Nexus Prime hung in space at the exact center of the galaxy, an artificial world larger than most stars. Built over millions of years by the combined efforts of 1,000 species, it was the ultimate symbol of Council power. Its crystal spires reached into space like grasping fingers, while its core contained technology that could reshape entire star systems. Now it was under siege. The combined human rebel fleet stretched across light years of space, a coalition of species that would have been impossible just months earlier. Sleek human ships flew alongside massive Valian mining vessels converted to warships. Aquatic Hydrani battle pods swam through vacuum next to the swarm fighters of the Kepri. Over 300 different species had answered humanity's call to end the Council's rule forever. But Nexus Prime was defended by the Eternal Armada, ships that had been built when the galaxy was young, crewed by the uploaded consciousness of beings who had chosen digital immortality over biological death. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic, powered by harvested energy from dying stars and controlled by minds that had been planning strategy for thousands of years. Admiral Chen Wei, his consciousness now existing simultaneously in biological and digital form, studied the defenses from the Bridge of the Defiance. The quantum link that connected all human minds had evolved during the war, creating a collective intelligence that could think on cosmic scales while retaining individual creativity. Analysis complete, reported Dr. Tanaka, her digital consciousness interfacing directly with the ship's sensors. Nexus Prime's defenses include reality manipulation fields, temporal barriers, and something we've never seen before, dimensional fortresses that exist partially outside normal space. Casualties estimates for direct assault? Chen asked. 90% losses minimum, and that's if everything goes perfectly. Chen nodded, having expected as much. The Council's capital wasn't just defended by weapons. It was defended by the fundamental forces of the universe itself. But humanity had learned something important during their war with the Council. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for, we haven't figured out how yet. Signal the fleet, Chen ordered. Begin Operation Ragnarok. Throughout the coalition fleet, ships began linking their quantum processors together. The network that had started as simple communication between human settlements had grown into something unprecedented, a galaxy-spanning web of consciousness that allowed different species to share thoughts, memories, and ideas in real time. The Valian miners contributed their deep understanding of matter and energy. The Hydrani added their knowledge of fluid dynamics and weather systems. The Kepri provided their experience with hive-mind coordination. Hundreds of other species offered their unique perspectives and abilities, but at the center of it all was humanity's strangest gift, the ability to look at an impossible problem and say, let's try. Anyway, the first phase of the assault began with something that had never been attempted in galactic history, a coordinated attack by digital consciousness. The human pilots who had been killed and uploaded during the war led swarms of AI-controlled ships directly into the heart of Nexus Prime's defenses. They weren't trying to destroy the defenses. They were trying to understand them. Each digital consciousness that was destroyed by the reality manipulation fields transmitted their final moments back to the collective intelligence. Slowly, piece by piece, Humanity and their allies began to map the Council's ultimate defenses. The temporal barriers operate on quantum frequency 7.4 terahertz, reported Commander Sarah Kim, her consciousness analyzing defensive patterns even as her ship was torn apart by Council weapons. Recommend phase-shifted approach on 7.6 terahertz. Her sacrifice, and thousands like it, provided the data needed for the second phase of the assault. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, now existing as pure information across the quantum network, began implementing modifications to reality that should have been impossible. Using processing power borrowed from millions of allied minds, she started rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas around Nexus Prime, creating dimensional instabilities around the fortress perimeter. She reported, Council ships are experiencing temporal drift. Their weapons are firing several seconds before they pull the triggers. The effect was chaotic and beautiful. Council ships found themselves caught in causality loops, their weapons fire arriving before they had decided to shoot. Reality became fluid around the edges of the battle, with cause and effect becoming suggestions rather than laws. But the Council had one final guardian. From the deepest levels of Nexus Prime, something emerged that made the previous battles look like minor skirmishes. The God Emperor of the Council had been the first being in galactic history to achieve true immortality, uploading his consciousness into quantum substrates billions of years ago. He was less a person than a force of nature, existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions. I am order. His voice resonated through space-time itself, reaching every consciousness in the fleet. I am stability. I am the law that prevents chaos from consuming all things. You would destroy 10 billion years of peace for the sake of your primitive concept of freedom. Admiral Chen, speaking for all of humanity and their allies, replied through the quantum network. Yes, the battle that followed couldn't be described in normal terms. It wasn't fought with ships and weapons, but with competing concepts of reality itself. The God Emperor wielded order and hierarchy as weapons, trying to impose his vision of cosmic stability on the rebels. His attacks took the form of natural laws that made rebellion impossible, physics that favored the strong over the weak, and causality chains that always led to submission. Humanity and their allies fought back with something the God Emperor couldn't understand: chaos that chose to cooperate. Every species in the coalition contributed something different to the defense. The Valians projected solidarity born from generations of shared labor. The Hydrani added currents of change that could adapt to any obstacle. The Kepri provided the strength of many minds working as one without losing individuality. But it was humanity's contribution that made the difference. Where other species brought specialized abilities, humans brought the simple, stubborn refusal to accept that anything was permanent just because it had always been that way. You cannot win, the God Emperor declared as reality bent and twisted around the battle. I have existed since the galaxy was young. I have seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. Your rebellion is meaningless in the face of cosmic time. Dr. Tanaka, her consciousness expanded across dimensions that hadn't existed before the battle began, laughed with the voices of 1 billion allies. You're right. Nothing lasts forever, including you. The weapon she unleashed wasn't made of matter or energy, but of pure information. The collective memories and experiences of every species that had ever been conquered by the Council. The God Emperor, who had existed in isolation for eons, was suddenly forced to experience what it felt like to be enslaved. To have your freedom stripped away, to live under the boot of a power you couldn't fight. For the first time in cosmic ages, the God Emperor felt doubt. That moment of uncertainty was enough. The Coalition fleet, guided by the combined intelligence of hundreds of species, struck at the heart of Nexus Prime's defenses. Reality itself began to unravel around the artificial world as competing visions of how the universe should work battled for dominance. In the end, it wasn't superior firepower that won the day. It wasn't better technology or clever tactics. It was the simple recognition that the choice between freedom and security wasn't really a choice at all. The God Emperor's final words, as his billion-year existence finally came to an end, were almost too quiet to hear. Perhaps I was wrong. Nexus Prime didn't explode. It simply changed. The crystal spires that had reached into space like grasping fingers became transmission towers, broadcasting messages of liberation to every corner of the galaxy. The massive computers that had calculated tribute requirements for millennia began sharing scientific knowledge freely with any species that wanted it. But the most important change was smaller and more subtle. In the quantum networks that now linked the galaxy's civilizations, the word tribute was being systematically replaced with a different word: gift. Species that had been forced to surrender their resources for 10,000 years were now free to share their abilities and knowledge by choice. The Valians no longer required to mine precious metals for council treasuries, instead offered their expertise to help other species build better homes. The Hydrani shared their weather control technology to help drought-stricken worlds, asking for nothing in return. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching as ships from across the galaxy worked together to dismantle the Council's instruments of oppression. It was slow work, but it was willing work, done by beings who had chosen to cooperate rather than being forced to submit. "What do we call it?" asked Dr. Tanaka, her consciousness still linked to the galactic quantum network. "This new thing we've built?" Thank you for watching and comment for next part.